for joining us today on Coastal and Progressive Rainbow Forum on Society Bites Radio. Today we will be speaking with Chris Gilbert. This is the third in a series of interviews we have done with him. And welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's good to be back again.
I'm going to give our listeners a little refresher here about your history, and then we're going to start off on picking up where we left off last week on your background, your platform. We've got a number of items to discuss on your platform, and I want to be certain that we get through them. I've got to remember here where I'm at. Chris Gilbert is a financial planning student and resident of Bradenton, Florida. Originally from Louisville, Kentucky, Chris graduated from Eckerd College in 1997 with a degree in American Studies with a specialty in environmental history. He's worked in communications for several large national corporations, including Tropicana Orange Juice and UPS, United Parcel Service. In 2015, Chris was appointed to the Braytonson's Tree and Land Preservation Board and served as its chair for 2 years. When Chris resigned from the Braytonson's Tree Board, Chris asked the Manatee County Commission to introduce discussions in several progressive initiatives, such as increased budgetary funding for indigent hospital care, worker training, following the COVID-19 related job issues that we've had. So many have lost their jobs. So, Chris, with that said, welcome back, and we're going to take up where we left off last week on some of your platform. And I'm going to just summarize again what we've already covered last week in your platform. We covered addressing the problems of corruption in the government. We covered civility in communications, and we covered the structure of the government here. So
yes.
We're going to start back up there, and I'm going to let you reintroduce yourself a little bit too there, okay? But we're going to start back up with growth, okay? And why growth, and I'm going to summarize part of what your platform stands for. You will advocate for reforms to the state law that would give citizens of Manatee County, through the county board, better control over how and when our wild and rural land is converted into new housing developments. Since I do not court or accept financial support from the business or PAC, I will never be beholden to any special business interests over the welfare of Manatee County environment. And that's well said, because, part of the attraction of people moving to this area or wanting to stay and live here is the natural beauty we have in some of this area. And some of the practices taken on by the state and some of the irresponsible planning done has endangered this on several fronts. For example, I don't know if you covered it later here, but I'll go ahead and start. Anyone who lived in Florida remembers Red Tide Rick. That was our former governor, now state senator. Our senator. And what the state went through, an absolute nightmare, and all the toxic effects from the red tide. But and that was part of growth. So I'll let you go ahead and talk now, because I know you know a lot more about this area probably than I do.
Yes, thank you. One of the most important side effects of elections in Manatee County is a profound disappointment. Candidates in the Republican Party, they promise to not be beholden to developers, and then when they get elected, they begin to vote to support letting the developers decide what Manatee County will become, because Manatee County is like a raw canvas at this point still. It's not too late to save it, but there's a choice. We're going to either be stewards of short-term profit for the developers, just a few wealthy people, or we're going to be stewards of the gifts that God gave us. And we can pass these natural, beautiful spaces on to our grandchildren, or we can let developers decide what we become. And my candidacy is about passing on a legacy of green space, open space, clean water to the people who come after us. And the disappointment that people feel is profound. There was a candidate who just got elected to our commission, Mr. George Cruz, who let people believe that he was going to be different. And then just yesterday, as soon as he didn't even have the wisdom to wait, because he launched right into a confusing spiel about why the exception that the county gave to developer Baruf, it was the right thing to do. But everything that he said in his Facebook post about it being the right thing to do was contradicted by public testimony in the meeting itself. So voters have to face this really confusing rhetoric that these skilled politicians put forth to confuse and demoralize people who want conservation. So it's a really challenging intellectual problem to argue for conservation.
It is, and conservation is again so important to us to maintain the beauty we have here in this state. And I wanted to go back to the red tide. This was a direct result of runoff of nutrients. They know what was part of the cause of this. The nutrients that are flowing into the water and so forth, and they know that these huge algae blooms that we have that causes the red tides and some of the god-awful messes that it's caused to happen to the state. I guess people finally started waking up and they realized that tourists do not want to come and have their eyes watering or being burnt by the toxins that are spilling over and coming out of the water when we have these huge toxic blooms coming in, and all the fish, and oh my Lord, the fish die-offs. I don't want to discourage tourism, but people who were here at that point in time, and the tourists fled in the droves, and that was the impact with red tide, and COVID came in right behind that then, and more tourism dollars lost. So, and that is again direct lack of planning and taking care of the environment. Period. It's that clear.
Exactly.
I don't know how much clearer it can be. And also the refusal of some to believe in science. Science is real. I don't know how much more we can say about it. Science corrects itself, and when it does make mistakes. But without believing in that and so forth, our growth and uncontrolled growth is going to damage our environment even more, and it has to be planned. It has to be carefully thought through. Okay, with that said, let's move on. We'll move on to some more because I want to get through, because you've got a long list of things on your platform here. I want to be sure to get through all of them. Okay, let's go to stormwater. Okay, and Manatee County residents deserve stormwater program that is effective and fair. I will work to see that they have one. We may have covered this part of it here with the runoff from the red tide situation. We do have an ordinance in place, and we have to explain to a lot of people, why they're not allowed to have runoff during certain times of the year because of the water, to water during certain times of the year. And can you go into a little more detail on your stormwater situation here about that and how you propose to improve our current system?
Sure thing. Taxpayers are being asked to pay the burden, and this is most blatantly highlighted last week when Manatee County gave developer Carlos Baruf of Medallion Homes permission to increase the density at his project at Whitfield and Lockwood Ridge, I think, to increase the density by 50%. And, just imagine the parking lot for all these units. And that's going to be built in a floodplain. Most of that project is in a 25-year floodplain, and it's in a FEMA floodplain as well. So developers escape these long-term costs. And about the red tide as well, the runoff from polluting industries, the way that commissioners see it now and candidates see it, they don't have a sense of urgency about moving Manatee County to sustainable energies and to sustainable businesses, even though those are really economically beneficial. The jobs that are tied to polluting industries or the jobs tied to construction, those are barriers because no one's doing anything serious to move the economy past the dependence on these industries that are ruining our land and water. So it's going to take courage and initiative and dedication to get these issues resolved.
And that's right. You have a good point. And there's nothing wrong with these industries because they all contribute, but they have to be monitored in such an effect that the actual construction they're doing. And have you heard the term LEED in LEED in housing? Do you know that term? If not, I'll introduce you to it here.
Sure, please do.
Okay. Leadership in Environmental and Engineering Design. It's a certification. And guess what? Manatee County had one of the first homes ever certified in this part of the state out there on Anna Marie Island. And I know the people who built the home and everything. They're friends of mine and are associates of mine, more likely to say. But, LEED is an important thing that's done for sustainable housing. And it's sustainable. It is environmentally friendly, it's engineered, it's designed, and these places are beautiful, and you can do whole developments like that. We also had one that was done down in Venice, a housing project down there that was LEED certified, and I know the people who were involved with that. My history on that goes back to when I was in development myself on a different scale than I am now. Now I'm involved, people probably already know that I'm involved in attainable and affordable housing, which is the more logical place to be. But, I was involved in projects that were going to be LEED certified out in California and before the economy collapsed in 2008. And we worked with it to make it energy and efficient and sustainable, and it's a smart way to do it. I know there's another project coming in here in Manatee County that is doing exactly that. I just read the document. I said, I'm impressed. Somebody's finally waking up here and doing some development that is actually environmentally friendly. But that's the point there. My point being, it can be done. It's not that uncommon. But but the developer that you just decided there, the same one that was cited for letting his son drive 100 and some mile an hour on Alligator Alley, not too long ago, in his car, it goes to the point of not really caring. As long as they get their money and grab the money and run. That's the philosophy. And don't care about what they leave behind or the damage that they do in their wake. And I could spend hours telling you stories about this in my years in development and so forth, and trying to do the right thing. And that's I could go into long stories. And one of those developers that's in Manatee County, in another city, another part of the country, they bought property directly beside us and did horrible damage to our property. And I wish now that I had been a little more harsh with them, but then I was trying to be a good neighbor and get along with them. But that's another thing. Anyway, let's move on, okay? Let's move on to roads, okay? I will call for this is on your platform, I will call for the board to impose the full impact fee instead of 90% and insist that developers pay every penny the Land Development Code requires. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, one of the biggest complaints from Manatee County people who live here and visit is, of course, the traffic. And there's a lot of things that we can do about roads and such, and I think I mentioned this later in my platform. The